Right, that's the end of that particular category. Let's do a quick time check. We're good for time, so I think we'll now move into data storytelling, and I think there is a quick question coming up. Let's have a look. How about web-safe fonts? Is there a way to use custom fonts? So generally, when you're publishing from Tableau desktop to Tableau server, and definitely when you're doing it to Tableau public as well, you can create something with a font that is downloaded on your computer, and then when it gets uploaded, it won't translate, and other people won't be able to view it in the font that you have got it installed in. So there is a list of web-safe fonts out there. I think there's also probably a Tableau public dashboard that has all of the fonts that you can use that automatically will be translated into something that the user will be able to see, and it won't edit. If you're wanting to use custom fonts, I think it's a bit of a longer workaround, a little bit more difficult to do, but still is possible, especially in an internal environment where you can maybe control wherever it's being viewed, what is the actual font that is going to be viewed by the people that are seeing it. But it's probably not a topic for just now, unfortunately. How to manage fonts on published dashboards when the output looks different on MacBook and Windows. I think unfortunately, same answer as before. It's something that is a bit more of a deep dive. I think generally the range of web-safe fonts that you've got on there are generally okay. You can manage them, especially when you're thinking about business dashboards. If you're wanting to design something that's a little bit more funky, one way that you can do it, especially for titles and headings, is instead of typing the font directly into Tableau, type it into PowerPoint instead, save that as an image, and then bring that into your dashboard as an image. And that way, Tableau is rendering an image of something that has been typed out somewhere else, rather than trying to load it on the web-safe font itself. So that's a workaround, but not necessarily good in all cases, especially when you want to do fonts, a consistent font throughout the whole dashboard. Okay, data storytelling. So I mentioned this book earlier, really, really good book. I can't recommend it enough, by Cole, Nussbaum and Affleck. I think there's a second one now as well, where it's got a blue front cover in it. It goes through some of the storytelling data exercises. So really, really good book here, and would recommend, if you don't have it already, then check that out. So when we think about data viz storytelling, data viz exists to make a topic easier to understand. And if you think back right to the start of the presentation when we were doing the knowing me, knowing you, we put the 3D pie chart up on the screen, and there's a lot of angst and a lot of hatred towards the 3D pie chart in the world of data visualization. Mainly because that front lip makes everything in the front half of the visualization look a lot larger than everything in the back of the visualization, because when the brain is trying to work out the size of the relative pieces of pie in this pie chart, it's doing that by calculating the size of them. And as soon as you bring this front lip, you tilt the axis, then this orange one, this blue one, looks a lot bigger than the ones at the back, which don't take as much area, don't take as much volume on the screen. In this one on the right, but there's far too much going on in this. If there's anything around the back there that is lower than the ones at the front, then obviously you're going to miss out on that data. So the whole reason that data visualization exists is to make a topic easier to comprehend and to understand. So we're going to go through a few examples. Here's a picture of Ali McCoist. We're going to go through a few ways that when data visualization is used in the wild, how it's kind of misconstrued, or some best practices that people are flaunting to get to a desired effect. So in this case, the story that it's rangers, I think, that want to tell a particular story, that they have put a large title across the top there, 38,000 season tickets, best sales for years. And what they've done to create this effect is they have manipulated the y-axis of our chart so that it starts, instead of at 0, it starts at around maybe 37,000. And so they're artificially manufacturing this huge jump in season ticket sales between 2012 and 2013 to make it look like they've done a really terrific job. Now, that's misleading, but I think it's fairly obvious, given that they've got the labels on the bars and given his slightly strange smile in this photo, that it is it's quite easy to pick out that this is misleading. Where it becomes a bit more difficult is when it is a little bit more subtle. So in this case, it is, again, it's relatively easy to pick out. You're looking at the numbers. In this case, it's the number of nurses that are being recruited. And we're looking at these icons as a way of encoding the data to tell us how many people are being recruited each year. So for the first 3 years, we've got small rise, and then up to 2011, and then up to 2013. So I've gone to the trouble of not formatting this particularly nicely, but showing you again how this looks like when you actually ground the x-axis at zero, the y-axis at 0, so that you can see the actual change as opposed to the misleading story that the New South Wales health system is trying to tell. Now, this one popped up on my Twitter feed not too long ago. I think it was this week, and this one's the worst one of the lot, because at first sight, this doesn't appear to be particularly misleading at all. It's got y-axis, it's got x-axis. It's a simple line chart, and there's some circles over the lines to show us the actual number of cases. But when you start to look much more closely at this, you start to realize that there's something strange going on with the y-axis. We jump from 30 to 60 to 90, and that's fine. It's jumps of 30, and then we go up to 100. So a jump of 10 from 90 to 100. Then we're back to 30 again, and then we go from 240 to 250. So they've actually had to work really hard here to manipulate the y-axis to tell a particular story. And when we go to this one, there's actually a video online of the difference. It's not a huge difference, but you're lying with the data you're doing by distorting the axis to tell a particular story. And in the previous ones we saw, it wasn't too difficult to pick up on, but in this one, you actually had to work a little bit harder to find that the x-axis, the y-axis was working in a very different way to how it should have been. So someone's gone ahead and superimposed the actual line if the x-axis, the y-axis was operating in the correct way. So again, thinking about how you tell the story of your data, one of the most important things is to be trustworthy and to gain your readers' trust by not doing things like this, not distorting axes, not adding in extra lines to make it appear like the cases per day was smaller than it actually is. So yeah, this one was a particularly shocking example. So we go from misleading to uninterpretability. So this one quite close to the heart. This one's football related, and I found this one on BBC Sport. It is quite a long time ago, so BBC are really good for visuals and for graphics and journalism, but in this particular case, I think it's very, very difficult to tell, if not impossible, who has scored the most goals and how many goals they've scored. Definitely, there's no way of telling how many goals they've scored, but if we think about proportionally, who has scored the most, who has scored the least here. So this isn't necessarily misleading, but it's uninterpretable. We're not actually getting anything from this particular example. So again, took the liberty of turning this into a bar chart, and it transpires that Wayne Rooney and Bobby Charlton also own goals, as it happens, are England's top goal scorers. And then Michael Owen down there is the lowest of the 6 that we've got on this screen. And that's because it's so much easier. First of all, there's no labels in our old charts. So labels, even if we had labels in there, that would have made it more readable. But secondly, it's much easier for the eye to detect differences in the length of a bar than it is to detect differences in the size of a segment. So the angle or the radius of a circle, as you can see here, is much easier to pick out, even very subtle differences, so differences of 1 between 48 and 49, than it would have been in our pie chart. Next thing, and going back to the BBC, unfortunately, this one's a more recent one. And this is talking about the use of visual metaphors in storytelling. So this was relatively early on in BBC's reporting, and it's unfortunate that BBC's corporate colour scheme is red. But right at the start of when they started reporting on coronavirus and the cases, they were using this dark red kind of blood cell clinical, quite scary looking format for presenting their news. And the story that comes along with that is quite hysterical. It's creating maybe more panic when it's the responsibility of the people that are presenting this information, the media, the news, the TV news channels, the journalists, to maybe present this in a way that is a little bit more neutral. So the best example I can use of this and the visual metaphor in storytelling is something that was really powerfully done on the Iraq War. And in this example, you've got the whole visual metaphor of this is that there's kind of the bar chart, in a sense, has been flipped so that it looks like it's blood streaming down the screen. And that straight away, when you see that, that sets the tone for what you're going to take out of this visualization, this infographic style piece. You're going to be thinking, oh wow, it's really awful, it's really bad, which it is. But if you flip that round, you change the title and you take away that red, scary red connotations with blood, connotations with anger and so on, it suddenly becomes a different story, and you can flip it. And actually, when you do it like this, that you can have a look at a very different story within the data, in that the deaths are actually in the decline. And that's not something that when I saw this for the first, I didn't pick up on that at all. I was just looking at the peaks of that. Wow, lots of deaths and so on. So unfortunately, a fairly morbid topic. But you can see the responsibility at the moment, especially at the moment when data visualization is really important. Thinking about the visual metaphors that you use in your pieces to really direct what the user thinks and feels emotionally, if they've got an emotional connection to the visualization, and how you can affect that by your color choices and the orientation and so on of your visualization. And the last one I wanted to touch on was that when you are doing these storytellings, that there is a habit to really embellish visualizations to make them look as exciting, engaging. And this probably comes back to the slide about the attention span in the goldfish, in that people are constantly seeing new content, they're seeing videos. And so journalists and people, information designers, want to grab the attention of the readers. And so something like this, which was on the Visual Capitalist, it really draws the attention. It's got very powerful imagery. We've got these green, we've got these red bubbles that look like little virus icons. And sure, I think this is an elegant visualization, but the issue here is that very quickly we're distorting what the actual story is here. So we look back here to the Black Death, the bubonic plague in 1347. And this virus is 200 million people died from that particular virus, approximately. Bring that forward to here, HIV/AIDS, which appears a lot bigger, and it's only 25. Well, I say only, it's 25 to 35 million, which is smaller than the 200 million. So in this case, because the timeline is going back into the distance, it's really distorting the actual numbers of this, and it's making it difficult to make a reasonable evaluation of which one maybe is the worst, or in terms of the death rate. So it's a sensitive topic. It's being presented in a way that, sure, it's engaging, it looks, it pops off the screen, but isn't actually telling the story in the way that we maybe need to see it. So especially when you get into these topics, it can be very sensitive. It can be very, you have to be very conscious of what you're presenting and doing it in a way that elegance doesn't come before the actual meaning that you're translating. Finally, with our data storytelling, I think the most important parts of this, and we're going to have a look at a few examples from the data journalism world. Text and annotations are so important in this part of it. Thinking about not just the headings, but the annotations that really draw out the information in your data. So I think I've selected three or four different news outlets that are now doing this really well, and that I think of as the leaders in this field. So the first one is Financial Times. Again, they've chosen a theme in their data storytelling The background's quite important here. It makes it feel a bit like a broadsheet. The background that they've chosen is similar to the one that comes in the print edition. So straight away, you're feeling like it's the Financial Times. You're knowing you're set into that context. And then the next thing here is the use of the annotations. So we've got a chart, and straight away they're using the labels to really call out parts of the visualization that is important. They've got quite a provocative title to draw you in. They've got a subtitle which gives us a bit more information. And again, we're looking at the source down there in the left-hand corner. We're looking at the publisher left-hand corner. So, and you'll see as we go through these, that is something that's consistent amongst all of the different outlets that are doing this really well, having those little bits of text that give the contextual information without taking up too much space. Another one here from the FT, again, this one doesn't necessarily have annotations. It's more open to interpretation, but I think in this one, the data really tells the story for itself. We're seeing these firms and the drop off from when they IPO'd to whenever the end day of this date was. So I think it's after 100 days. So quickly using text annotations, titles, callouts can really embellish the story within your data. We'll zoom through these, I think, a bit quickly, but this is The Economist. You'll notice that where the Financial Times had that kind of beige background that is synonymous with the Financial Times, Economist have subtly added in their red branding up here, label down there. But again, they've got the annotations, they've got a little asterisk explaining why for economics, the data doesn't quite stretch the rest of the way. So adding in a little bit of information to make the reader feel comfortable that there's a reason that the data is not there, rather than they just either didn't have it or they couldn't be bothered. And finally, 538. So I think 538 were potentially the ones that started off this trend of really high quality visual data journalism, where they were creating something that was in a very similar brand. When people saw a 538 visual, they expect that title up there, they expect that subtitle, and then under the line again, we've got our referencing stuff here. So all of the examples we've just shown, and because I've been bashing the BBC with their BBC Sport article and the coronavirus one, the BBC are really, really good at doing this as well now. They create some really powerful visuals. A lot of the time when you log on, there is visual explanations where they're using charts like this to explain the story, and they're putting the words and the actual narrative between the various charts to explain what's going on.